Welcome to the final segment, Segment 4, for Mr. Corbett's 1301 history class. In Chapter 12, we will cover slavery and sectionalism, the political crisis of 1848 to 1861, the slavery question in the territories, political realignment, two societies, and finally a house divided. The person we're covering in this chapter is Zachary Taylor. He was the first president to never to have held any previous elected office. He was always a general. He was the last president to hold slaves while in office and the last Whig to win a presidential election. He was known as Old Rough and Ready. And Taylor had a 40-year military career in the United States Army, serving in the War of 1812, the Black Hawk War, the Second Seminole War, and the Mexican-American War. Taylor is thought to have died of gastroenteritis just 16 months into his term, the third shortest tenure of any president, and finally Taylor would lead the 1st Infantry Regiment in the Black Hawk War of 1832, personally accepting the surrender of Chief Black Hawk. Chapter 13, we're going to cover the Civil War. A nation torn apart. The Civil War 1861 to 1865. Mobilization, strategy, and diplomacy. The early campaigns 1861 to 1862. Behind the lines and toward Union victory. In this chapter, I'm going to focus on Abraham Lincoln. I could have chosen many different characters or events. Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson, William Tecumseh Sherman, Nathan Bedford Forrest, Dick Dowling, African Americans fighting the black units, women, serving as spies. The list goes on and on. However, I'm going to focus on Abraham Lincoln. He would be elected to the House of Representatives in 1846. He only served 1 2-year term. He was replaced. He would serve as a member of the Whig Party, and he served as a captain in a company of Illinois militia during the Black Hawk War, but never saw any action. In 1949, he received a patent for a device to buoy vessels over shoals. The idea was never commercialized, but Lincoln is still the only person to hold a patent and serve as U.S. President. And finally, he was the first Republican president, winning entirely on the strength of his support in the North. He was not even on the ballot in 10 states in the South and won only 2 of 996 counties in all southern states. Chapter 14, Now That We Are Free. Reconstruction and the New South, 1863 to 1900. Preparing for Reconstruction, the fruits of freedom, the struggle to redefine Reconstruction, implementing Reconstruction, Reconstruction abandoned, and finally the New South. In this chapter, we're going to focus on a very interesting man, Booker T. Washington. He was a dominant figure in the African American community in the United States from 1890 to 1915. He would receive national prominence for his Atlanta address of 1895. In 1881, he would be named the first leader of the new Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. Washington, as guest of President Theodore Roosevelt in 1901, was the first African American ever invited to the White House. In 1942, the Liberty ship Booker T. Washington was named in his honor. This is the first major ocean-going vessel to be named after an African American. The ship was christened by Marion Anderson. On April 7, 1940, Booker T. would become the first African American to be depicted on a U.S. postage stamp, and the first coin to feature an African American was a Booker T. Washington Memorial $half that was minted from 1946 to 51. And this concludes History 1301, Segment 4, and all the chapter. If you have any questions, please contact me at any time. Thank you for having me as your instructor.